Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are standing at the threshold of something. Well, something massive.
Mm.
And I don't just mean physical size, though we are talking about huge buildings. I mean massive in terms of memory. We're looking at an institution that's basically holding the hard drive of human civilization for an entire region.
It's a staggering archive. We're
Yeah.
talking about the National Museum of Iran. And to give you a sense of the scale right off the bat, this place isn't just a gallery with a few, pretty vases.
No,
It's the custodian of over 3 million artifacts.
3 million. That number is just, it's hard to wrap your head around. It's the oldest archaeological museum in West Asia, and honestly, it's a heavyweight champion when it comes to historical preservation.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing that really got me when we were digging into the research for this. It's not just one building. It's actually two distinct complexes in Tehran that function as this massive time capsule.
Precisely. You have the Museum of Ancient Iran and then the Museum of the Islamic Era. And between the two of them, they're trying to do something almost impossible.
Which is?
Tell the comprehensive story of us. And by us, I mean humanity in that region, stretching all the way from Neanderthals making stone tools right up to the intricate mathematical artistry of the Safavid kings.
That is a huge scope, hundreds of thousands of years. But before we get lost in that timeline, can we just pause on the wait, what factor of this place?
The surprises.
Yeah, the surprises. Because there are some things in this collection that just sound made up, like the fact that they have what is technically considered the world's first animation.
On a piece of pottery.
On pottery from 5,000 years ago.
It's a remarkable artifact from Shari-Sukhdeh, and we will definitely unpack how that works later. It challenges a lot of our assumptions about what ancient art was capable of.
And the other thing that threw me, and maybe this is just my own ignorance showing, is that the most iconic building of this Iranian national treasure, a building that looks like it grew out of the ancient history of Persia itself, was actually designed by a Frenchman.
That's true, André Godard. And that origin story is actually the perfect place to start, because the museum's existence wasn't exactly a straight line.
It didn't just appear overnight.
No. It had a bit of a rocky start.
Right. So let's rewind. Early 20th century. Who wakes up and decides we need a museum? Because usually people are worried about, food and shelter.
Well, the intellectual class was very concerned with heritage. The first serious proposal came in 1906. There was a man, Morteza Gholi Khan Hedayat. He had this vision, but as is often the case with ambitious projects, it didn't quite get off the ground immediately.
So it was just a great idea on paper.
Exactly. It wasn't until 1916 that something actually opened, but it was incredibly modest. They called it the Museum of Education. And if you're picturing a grand hall, stop.
Picture a closet.
Picture a supply closet. It was basically one room in the Ministry of Education building. They had about 270 items, some pottery, old weapons, seals.
A far cry from 3 million items.
It was a start. But the real turning point, the moment it starts to become the institution we know today, happens in the late 1920s. And this connects to that French influence you mentioned.
Right, because at this time, archaeology in the region was heavily dominated by Europeans. It was sort of the era of the great game applied to history.
It was. The French specifically had a stronghold. For a long time, French archaeologists had an unconditional privilege to excavate in Iran. But in 1927, the Iranian government pushed back. That privilege was canceled.
Okay.
But the government still wanted a proper national museum and library. And as a sort of diplomatic trade-off, the privilege of designing it was given to France.
So it was a deal. You can't dig everywhere anymore, but you can build the house where we keep the history.
In a way, yes. So in 1929, a French architect and archaeologist named André Godard comes to Iran. He's the key figure. And the building he designed, the Museum of Ancient Iran, is fascinating because it's this fusion of cultures.
I was looking at photos of it. It's this massive, dark brick structure. It looks incredibly imposing.
It is. Construction was between 1935 and 1937. Godard, along with Maxime Sarrou, designed it. But here's the fascinating detail. Even though they were French, they didn't build a French-style building.
They didn't drop a neoclassical bank from Paris into Tehran.
Exactly. They looked at Iran's own history for inspiration.
That huge, dark archway in the front, it looks ancient.
That's the key feature. It was intentionally influenced by the Sassanid style, specifically the famous Ta Khazra at Ctesiphon, that massive vaulted arch that you want.
So he's using the country's own architectural language to house its history.
Which is a pretty respectful move for a foreign architect in the 1930s. It frames the entry into history through the lens of that history itself.
Now, if you look at the second complex, the Museum of the Islamic Era, it's a totally different vibe.
Completely. Yeah, that one looks much more modern. White stone sitting on the grass.
Right, travertine. But even there, the inspiration is historical. It's built on an octagonal cruciform plan inspired by the Sassanid palace at Bishapur.
So both buildings are echoing the past, just in different ways. One dark and heavy, the other white and geometric.
But the Islamic Era Museum had a much more turbulent birth.
It did. It was being remodeled right when the Iranian Revolution swept the country in the late 70s. So its full potential was, well, it was delayed.
Okay, so we had the stage set, two buildings. Let's walk inside. Let's do this walk through deep time. Because you mentioned Neanderthals earlier, and I feel like people don't usually associate museums in Tehran with Neanderthals.
And that's a huge oversight. The Ancient Iran Museum has a collection that goes back to the lower Paleolithic period. We're talking about the very dawn of human activity in the region.
So what are we actually looking at? Are these just rocks?
To the untrained eye, maybe. But these are Mysterian-sewn tools from places like Kashafrud and Darband. These were made by Neanderthals. This is before Homo sapiens were the only game in town.
That's incredible. Just the idea of standing there looking at a tool that a different species of human held in their hand.
It really grounds you, and it continues through the Upper Paleolithic. There are tools from Yafta dating back 30,000, maybe 35,000 years. But as we move forward in time, the artifacts get more complex. We start seeing art. And that brings us to your favorite item.
The goat. The movie Goat?
The pottery from Shar-e-Sukte, the burnt city.
Okay, lay it out for us. How is a cup an animation? Because usually pottery just sits there.
So imagine an earthen goblet. Around the side of it, the artist has painted 5 panels. Each panel shows a goat in a slightly different position.
Right.
In the first, he's standing. In the next, he's rearing up. Then he's midair. Then he's grabbing a leaf from a tree.
And if you spin it...
If you spin the goblet, the persistence of vision kicks in. The images blur together, and you see the goat jump up and snatch the leaf. It is, for all intents and purposes, the earliest known example of animation.
That is just mind-blowing. Someone 5,000 years ago was sitting there thinking, I bet I can make this goat move. It's like they were inventing cinema before they'd even perfected the wheel.
It speaks to a very human desire to capture life in motion. It wasn't enough to just draw the goat. They wanted to capture the action of the goat.
I love that. Prehistoric cinema. Okay, moving through the gallery, we hit the heavy hitters. We have to talk about the saltmen.
The saltmen are fascinating.
Yeah.
A bit macabre. These are naturally mummified remains preserved in salt mines. The level of preservation is eerie. You can see hair, clothing, leather, boots.
And these weren't kings wrapped in linen.
No, these were miners. Ordinary workers who died in a collapse.
Yeah.
The salt just dried them out. It gives you this visceral connection to the past. You aren't looking at a statue of a god. You're looking at a guy who went to work 2,000 years ago and never came home.
That hits hard. And speaking of statues, we do have the big ones. You have Darius the Great.
Yes, the statue of Darius, the massive columns from Persepolis, symbols of imperial power. But there's another statue that I find even more poignant, the statue of Penelope.
Penelope as in from the Odyssey, Odysseus' wife.
The very same. A marble statue of Penelope grieving for her lost husband, found in the ruins of Persepolis.
What was a Greek mythological statue doing in the capital of the Persian Empire?
That's the big question. It was likely a diplomatic gift or maybe war booty.
Yeah.
But here's the beautiful part. It's one of only 4 such statues in the world. The others are in the Vatican and Rome.
Wow.
And a few years ago, back in 2016, there was this reunion exhibition.
They brought the sisters together.
They did. First in Milan, and then the Italian statues traveled to Tehran. It was this beautiful moment where these marble sisters, separated by history, were reunited in the very place where one of them had been buried for centuries.
That's surprisingly emotional for a story about rocks. It shows that art has a life of its own.
It does. And speaking of shiny things, before we leave the ancient world, we have to mention the gold. The Iron Age stuff.
The Marlet collection.
The gold cups, the animal statues.
Yeah.
There's a ring of power from the Elamite period. It shows the incredible richness of the metalwork. It pushes back against any idea that this is a dark age. The craftsmanship is world-class.
Okay, so that's the ancient building. We've done Neanderthals, the movie Goat, the saltmen, the gold. Now we walk across the grass to the white building, the Museum of the Islamic Era.
And here, the atmosphere changes completely. You have about 1,500 works on display. The materials shift. You start seeing delicate astrolabes, adobe calligraphy, medieval textiles.
It feels more personal, maybe?
It is closer to our time, and you see the shift in focus towards the written word, towards geometry. But the personalities are still there. For example, the personal items of Abbas the Great.
This is the Shah who basically rebuilt Isfahan.
Yes. They have his sword, his shield, his dress. Seeing the clothing of a historical figure like that, it removes the abstraction. He was a man who wore this dress, held this shield. It makes the history tactile.
And there's a piece you flagged as important, the Paradise Gate.
Ah, yes. It's a mihrab, a prayer niche from the Ilkhanate Empire. And along with these intricate wooden windows from 1126 AD, it shows how Iranian identity evolved.
How so?
It wasn't that the ancient Persian identity disappeared when Islam arrived. It blended. You see the artistic continuity, the geometric mastery, the love of detail applied to religious architecture. It's a story of evolution, not replacement.
So I want to pivot a bit because a museum isn't just a warehouse for old stuff. It's a player on the world stage. And this museum seems incredibly active in what we might call cultural diplomacy.
That's a very good term for it. Art can travel across borders that people sometimes can't.
Take us back to 2010, the Cyrus Cylinder.
This was a massive moment, an exchange with the British Museum. The Cyrus Cylinder is often called the first charter of human rights. It's a huge point of pride for Iranian history, but it lives in London.
So they brought it home.
For 4 months. And the reaction was overwhelming. 500,000 people visited it at Tehran.
That's rock concert attendance.
It shows the hunger people have to connect with that heritage.
And then they did it again with the Louvre in 2018.
Yes. For the museum's 80th anniversary, 50 masterpieces from the Louvre came to Tehran, drew over 250,000 visitors. It's these moments of connection, Paris to Tehran, London to Tehran, that bridge gaps.
But it's not always friendly loans. Sometimes it's like a crime thriller. We have to talk about the case of the smuggled relief.
This is a wild story. So there was this Sassanid release, a stone carving dating back to somewhere between 224 and 651 AD.
Worth a bit of money.
Estimated to be worth over 30 million pounds. It was illegally smuggled out of Iran in the 80s, probably hacked out of a rock face during the Iran-Iraq War. It ends up in the UAE, sits there for years, and then in 2016, someone gets greedy and tries to bring it into the UK to sell it.
And they got caught.
Seized at Stansted Airport. Border Force officers saw the crate and thought, this looks suspicious.
I love that. Just sitting in an airport hangar, a 30 million pound treasure wrapped in bubble wrap.
Exactly. It took years of legal wrangling. But finally, in June 2023, it was returned to Iran. It's now permanently displayed at the museum. A real victory.
It sends a message, too. You can steal it, but you can't keep it.
Right. And speaking of returns, we have to mention the Achaemenid tablets.
From the University of Chicago, right?
Yes, in 2024. These had been on loan since the 1930s. Thousands of clay tablets.
Now, be honest, clay tablets sound kind of boring compared to gold cups.
Visually, maybe. They're small brown lumps of clay with little scratches. But the content is thrilling. If you want to know what life was actually like.
Why? That's on them.
They aren't grand proclamations of kings. They're receipts.
Receipts.
Administrative records.
Yeah.
They detail wages, road management, how much barley a worker got paid, travel permits.
So it's the Excel spreadsheets of the Achaemenid Empire.
Exactly. And that's why they're so valuable. They tell us about the common people, the economy, the daily grind of life under Darius the Great. You don't get that from a statue of a king. You get that from the tax records.
That's a great point. The boring stuff makes the history real. It turns the empire from a myth into a functioning society.
And recently, the museum has been taking that history on the road on a scale we haven't seen before.
The China Connection.
The Glory of Ancient Persia exhibition. This toured China in 2024 and early 2025. The numbers were just staggering.
I saw this stat and I had to double check it. 50 million visitors.
Over 50 million. It was the biggest exhibition abroad in the museum's history.
That's the population of a medium-sized country walking through an exhibit of Persian history.
It shows the massive global interest. It suggests the museum isn't just sitting in Tehran waiting for visitors. It's aggressively exporting its culture, using soft power in a very effective way.
So when we look at the National Museum of Iran today, in 2026, it seems like it's operating on two levels.
It is. On one hand, it's the vault. The fortress in Tehran guarding the Mousterian tools and the gold of Marlik. It's the physical anchor of the nation's memory.
And on the other hand,
It's a diplomat. It's a traveler. It's reclaiming stolen art from British airports and breaking attendance records in Shanghai. It's remarkably dynamic for an institution that deals with things that have been dead for thousands of years.
It really is. It's a reminder that history isn't static. It moves. It gets smuggled, it gets returned, it goes on tour.
And that raises an interesting question for us to chew on.
What's that?
Well, the museum holds over 3 million artifacts, but only a fraction around 300,000 are typically on display in Tehran. Yet one exhibition in China reached 50 million people. So, in the 21st century, where does the true power of a national museum lie? Is it inside the walls of that beautiful brick building André Godard designed? Or is its true power in its ability to leave those walls and travel the world?
That's a big question. Is the museum the building, or is the museum the story it tells, wherever it tells it?
I think the answer is changing right in front of us.
Something to think about next time you walk into a gallery or see a video of a jumping goat on your feed.
Indeed.
That's all for this deep dive into the time capsule of Tehran. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.